Boxing is a sport that thrives on brutal truths, where dreams are shattered with the crack of a glove against a jaw, and legacies are ruined in the blink of an eye. In the ring, there's no room for weakness, no space for excuses. But what happens when a fighter, destined for greatness, falls from grace in a spectacular display of failure? And what about the underdog? Someone who was never meant to win, yet defies every expectation, leaving the world in stunned disbelief. Why do we remember the failures more than the triumphs? Today, we dive into the stories of two boxers, one who shocked the world by refusing to lose, and another who let everyone down when it mattered most. Which one will haunt you more? When the world didn't see it coming in. Boxing, the term underdog, often comes with a sense of doom. The underdog is expected to be crushed, to be nothing more than a stepping stone on the path of a champion. But what happens when the underdog refuses to play by the script? What happens when the underdog becomes the nightmare of every bookie and every fan who dismissed him as a no-name, a nobody? That's exactly what happened on February 11, 1990, in Tokyo, Japan. The world was ready to witness another Mike Tyson demolition job, another quick, brutal display of the champion's unparalleled power. Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, was undefeated, undisputed, and in the eyes of many, unbeatable. But in the other corner stood James "Buster" Douglas, a fighter who was considered a mere 42-1 underdog, a man who was supposed to be just another notch on Tyson's belt. But Douglas wasn't just fighting Tyson that night. He was fighting for his life, his late mother, and for every person who had ever told him he couldn't do it. How many of us could have predicted that this underdog would soon turn the boxing world upside down? From the opening bell, Douglas fought like a man possessed. He wasn't intimidated by Tyson's reputation, and he didn't shy away from the champion's ferocious attacks. Instead, he stood his ground, landing jabs and combinations that seemed to shake Tyson's confidence. As the rounds wore on, something unthinkable happened. Tyson, the unstoppable force, began to look vulnerable. Could it be that the man who had crushed so many others was now facing his own demise? In the 8th round, the world witnessed something it never expected. Tyson was floored by a powerful combination from Douglas. As Tyson scrambled to find his mouthpiece, a surreal, almost pitiful sight, the question on everyone's mind was clear. Is this really happening? Could Tyson, the invincible champion, be on the brink of defeat? By the 10th round, Douglas sealed the deal with a crushing uppercut that sent Tyson to the canvas for good. The unthinkable had happened. Buster Douglas, the ultimate underdog, had done the impossible. But why was this victory so shocking? Was it because we had all been so blinded by Tyson's aura of invincibility that we couldn't see his weaknesses? Or was it because, deep down, we all love a good fall from grace? Douglas's victory wasn't just an upset. It was a seismic event that shattered the myth of Tyson's invincibility and reminded the world that, in boxing, no one is safe. But why is it that we remember this moment not just for the triumph of the underdog, but for the shocking fall of a champion who was supposed to be untouchable? And what does that say about us as fans, as people who revel in the downfall of those who seem too good, too powerful, too perfect? The devastating fall of a favorite, when a legacy crumbles. If there's anything more compelling than an underdog's triumph, it's the spectacular collapse of a favorite. A fighter who was supposed to win, who was supposed to be unbeatable, yet crumbles under the weight of expectation. Why do we find ourselves so captivated by these moments of failure? Is it because we're reminded that even the greatest can fall? Or is it because we secretly revel in watching them do so? Few stories in boxing illustrate this better than the fall of Count Sonny Liston. Liston was a man who inspired fear in the hearts of his opponents long before he ever stepped into the ring. His criminal past, his intimidating physique, and his devastating power made him seem more monster than man. He destroyed Floyd Patterson not once, but twice in the first round, earning the heavyweight title and cementing his reputation as the most feared man in boxing. But what happens when the man who's supposed to be unbeatable meets someone who simply doesn't care? What happens when the monster in the ring becomes the one who's afraid? Enter Cassius Clay, a brash young fighter with a mouth as fast as his fists. Clay, who would later become Muhammad Ali, was everything Liston was not: charismatic, flashy, and completely unafraid. As the 1964 fight between Clay and Liston approached, the odds were heavily in Liston's favor. How could this young upstart, this cocky kid, possibly stand up to the most feared man in boxing? But then, isn't that what makes the fall of a favorite so deliciously painful to watch? The fight itself was a shocker from the start. Clay danced around Liston, landing jabs and combinations while avoiding the champion's heavy punches. Liston, who was used to steamrolling his opponents, couldn't land the shots that had made him so feared. By the 6th round, Liston was exhausted, frustrated, and bewildered. But then came the moment that would define his legacy. Liston failed to answer the bell for the 7th round. He had quit on his stool, claiming a shoulder injury, but the damage was done. Liston, the most feared man in boxing, had let everyone down. But it wasn't just the loss that shocked the world. It was the way it happened. How could a man who had destroyed every opponent before him simply give up? Was the invincibility of Sonny Liston nothing more than an illusion? And more importantly, how did it feel for those who believed in him, who feared him, to watch him crumble in such a spectacular fashion? The rematch between Ali and Liston only deepened the controversy. By this time, Cassius Clay had changed his name to Muhammad Ali, a name that would become legendary. The so-called phantom punch that dropped Liston in the 1st round remains one of the most debated moments in boxing history. Did Liston take a dive? Was he truly knocked out? Or was he paid off, forced to lose by powers beyond the ring? And if so, how much of Liston's career was a lie, a facade constructed by those who controlled him? Liston's fall from grace wasn't just a loss, it was a complete collapse of a legacy that had been built on fear and power. His career never recovered, and his mysterious death in 1970 only added to the tragic aura that surrounded him. But why do we remember Sonny Liston not for his victories but for his failures? Is it because his downfall reminds us that even the most fearsome can be brought to their knees? Or is it because, in watching him fail, we confront our own fears of inadequacy, our own potential for failure? The two sides of boxing. Boxing is a sport that thrives on the extremes, the highest highs and the lowest lows. It's a world where underdogs can shock the world and favorites can fall from grace in the blink of an eye. The stories of Buster Douglas and Sonny Liston are stark reminders of this reality. One of a man who rose to the occasion and another who crumbled under pressure. Buster Douglas's victory over Mike Tyson remains one of the greatest upsets in sports history. It is a testament to the power of belief, of rising to the occasion when the odds are stacked against you. Douglas's story is one of redemption, of finding strength in the face of overwhelming adversity. It is the kind of story that reminds us why we love boxing, because in this sport, anything can happen. On the other hand, Sonny Liston's fall from grace serves as a sobering reminder of the pressures that come with being the favorite. Liston was a fighter who had everything: power, skill, and an aura of invincibility. But when faced with a challenger who refused to be intimidated, Liston crumbled. His story is one of unfulfilled potential, of a champion who couldn't live up to the expectations placed upon him. It is a story that highlights the darker side of boxing, where the weight of expectation can be as crushing as any punch. The unpredictable nature of boxing. The stories of Buster Douglas and Sonny Liston are reminders of the unpredictable nature of boxing. In this sport, the underdog can shock the world, and the favorite can fall from grace in the blink of an eye. These moments are what make boxing so compelling, so unforgettable. They are the reason we watch, the reason we cheer, and the reason we continue to believe that in the world of boxing, anything is possible. But these stories also carry a deeper message, a message about the nature of expectation and the human spirit. For every underdog who rises to the occasion, there is a favorite who falters. For every Buster Douglas, there is a Sonny Liston. And in their stories, we see the full spectrum of what it means to be a fighter: the triumphs, the tragedies, the highs, and the lows. In the end, boxing is not just about who wins or loses. It's about the journey, the struggle, and the fight within. It's about those moments that define a fighter's legacy, whether they are the underdog who shocks the world or the favorite who lets everyone down. And as long as boxing exists, these stories will continue to be told, reminding us all of the unpredictable, heartbreaking, and exhilarating nature of the sport we love.